Helena, welcome to Resilient Retail. I am so excited to have you guys both on the podcast. Helena, you and I have done interviews before. Jaime, I've been following you since like day one of being in the e-commerce community. So I'm a bit of a fangirl of both of your work. Just to get started, I'll start with you, Jaime. Can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm the founder of Schmidt's Naturals. I guess that's probably what I'm most known for. It's a brand of personal care products that I started in my kitchen back in 2010. Scaled the brand over 7 years to an acquisition by Unilever. That was in 2017. And today, I do a lot of things. I'm an investor, actually a proud investor in Helena's brand Haus. Also an author of a book I just released in September. It's called Supermaker, Crafting Business on Your Own Terms. Also owner of a media company called Supermaker, alongside my husband and business partner, Chris Cantino. Just living the life, helping entrepreneurs, and happy to be here.
Yeah, just a few things you've got going on. I'm also currently reading your book. I read half of it over Thanksgiving break, just ingested it so fast because it's so great.
Awesome.
So listeners, for sure, go check out the book Supermaker. Buy it. It's so helpful to hear kind of your journey. And Helena, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi. I'm a co-founder of a company called Haus. Some people describe us as the Glossier Everlane away of booze. We're the first direct-to-consumer company in the space, and we're really just trying to rethink how alcohol should be for this generation.
Yeah, I love it. And I know you guys both have these super rich backstories, which I want to touch on a little bit, and we'll get to some other stuff today. But Jaime, your story starts at such a, when you're saying your bio, it feels like from a listener's perspective, you're this absolute genius, mega success. You've done all this stuff. You've built an entire business, you've sold it, and now you're investing. But your roots were really in very grassroots retail of being at farmers markets and then being in local stores. Can you tell us just a little bit about kind of your journey to how you got from making soaps and deodorant in your kitchen and starting at the most grassroots place you can to where you are now?
Yeah, I think a lot about these businesses today, building up to this huge launch, it's this big moment. And for me, it was more just kind of a stumbling into it. So no, I wasn't a, business whiz with a lot of experience or, a really, scripted out business plan. It really just started as a hobby for me. I really was interested in creating clean, natural personal care products, and I was using them for myself, sharing them with family. I was pregnant at the time too, so it just kind of made sense. And in Portland, I'm here in Portland, Oregon. There's no shortage of opportunity to get out and sell. It's a really creative community. People want to buy products that people make. It's just a very DIY culture. So I fit in here. This was kind of my way of sort of finding my space in Portland. And so I'd get out at the farmers markets and the street festivals and set up a booth and sell. And never had anticipated Schmidt's turning into what it's turned into today. I really built up a strong following in those early days at the farmers markets, used that opportunity to, really create a community of customers and get feedback in the moment that I could use to just sort of support my product development. And, next thing you know, I had some interest from some local wholesalers and really just understood the business potential and what I was doing. This was back in 2010. There weren't a lot of natural deodorants on the market. And, Schmidt's was different. We looked different. We had, refreshing branding and just some sense that didn't yet exist in the market. And so I understood the potential of going all in and, fast forward 7 years and we'll get into everything that happened later. But those are the early days.
Yeah. Helena, what about you? I know your, intro into entrepreneurship story is very similar in the sense of pretty grassroots, pretty based in community. Can you talk about those kind of early days in building Haus?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely an anomaly in many ways, right? We're bringing indie brand values to the internet. And so I think in some ways our launch was very non-traditional in our space. We're the first direct-to-consumer company in the alcohol space. But I think we brought a lot of the ideals that we carried with us from our prior life, which was, Woody having a winery, me working in the tech community, but in client services and understanding the value of personal relationships and word of mouth. All of our experience we kind of brought to the table in thinking like, okay, how can we build a brand that like we want impact, right? We want to go after the Diageos and the Pernods and the Camparis of the world. So we want to go big and we want to make great products accessible to everybody. But how can we bring those small business values, which are a little more long game, right? Like we're not going to go and throw millions of VC dollars into paid marketing. We're going to like, how can we build this the right way, but also do it big? That's really what we were trying to wrap our mind around.
Yeah, I love you guys both just mentioned something that I was really excited to talk about, which I think it's unique to both of your businesses, which was this very real start in small business, slow, calculated growth that came from a community versus I think what a lot of brick and mortar owners are seeing now are, the big VC funded companies and the unicorns online. And they're kind of looking at it going like, how in the world, there's no world in which I'm ever going to compete online with these brands. But you guys are living proof that like you can compete with those brands by doing it, like Helena, you said, doing it right. Jaime, can you talk a little bit about that strategy of starting very close knit with your community instead of going as big and as bold as possible right away and kind of taking your time through those steps?
Mm-hmm. I mean, to be honest, I didn't see it as a strategy in those days. It was really just sort of a natural evolution of my brand. It was a product I was making with my hands and just really just loving the process of all of it. And, once I understood the business potential, I, of course, had to put a little more strategy and planning behind it. But just being out in the community, and engaging with customers, it just felt like the right thing to be doing. I loved it. It was, the first time in my career that I actually was enjoying myself. And so from there, I continued to carry that philosophy forward as Schmidt's grew, always putting the customer first. And of course that looked different as we got bigger. I wasn't out at the markets face to face, and so that was a little more challenging and something that I had to be, really intentional about. But we did it in ways, that made sense for a bigger company. So we would reach out through newsletters, or we would tap into our community through social media and just really, gain that feedback that way. And the brands we were competing against back then, it started as natural brands that were our biggest competitors, right? So you think Tom's and Maine, Jason. There weren't a whole lot of natural deodorant brands on the market at the time. But within a couple of years, we really understood that the real opportunity was in conventional, competing with every deodorant brand and not just natural. And so, that did look a little bit different. So you're talking, Dove, Secret, Axe deodorant. So with that came the need for education and just really, letting customers understand why it made sense to choose a brand like Schmidt's. But then at the same time, being, careful of things like using scare tactics to promote a clean, healthy ingredient mix.
Yeah. And Helena, very similar with you. I remember you guys did this and now like, what is time? I think this was 2019, but I could be totally off of my timeline. But I remember this time where you guys actually did this kind of traveling tour of happy hours where you offered just, hey, me and Woody are going to be at a bar and we're going to be serving house drinks and you can come and drink for free and you get to talk one-on-one with us as the founders. I think that's actually something that's kind of rare to do and to be so accessible by your customers. So, with retail, here's like the tie into retail is I keep telling all these merchants that I talk to is you've had a store for so long, you've had these one-on-one interactions happening in real life for so long. There's a really big advantage to that. And so that's what, I'm edging towards that with this question of why did you guys do those happy hour tours and what did you learn and how did it impact what you do now in the business?
I think the short answer is because we like it, right? Like Woody's biggest joy in the world, my co-founder husband, is making beautiful booze and sharing it with people. When he had a winery, he'd have people come up for tastings every day, and it was his favorite thing to do in the world. So I didn't see that ending when we, had Haus, and it was very important to us to figure out how do we connect with our customers. But I'm a child of the internet, and one of my biggest beliefs is there are parallels. You can make that same kind of experience happen online as well. You're not going to physically be sharing a drink face to face, but in terms of getting to know your customers, having a dialogue, showing them how much you appreciate them, treating them like normal humans instead of, some sort of data point. I think a lot of it just has to come down to your mindset of customers can be friends.
Yeah.
Customers can be peers. Customers are people you can learn from, not just about your product, but about life or whatever they're doing. And if you think about it as this beautiful treasure trove of humans that you can, hang out with for the rest of your life, it actually becomes very, very fun and not so daunting.
Yeah. And once, the pandemic hit and obviously you couldn't be doing in real life 50 people at a bar having drinks, how were you able to kind of transition those customer connections and conversations online to be able to still have that kind of magic with your customers?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, we'll never know, right?
Yeah.
2020, the year of touring events, we'll never know what that would have been like. But I think it's been a really good exercise for us to figure out how can we make people feel connected to us through the internet. I've been doing that just with myself for a long time. I've met so many wonderful people on the internet in the last 15 years. So it came really naturally to me. But I think as a company, we really had to think through it, right? And I think it actually has been a really amazing experience for us, just being able to not just have dialogues, but also, do surveys and, actually just have this back and forth that no other liquor companies ever had with their customers before. It not only makes them feel, stoked to be part of the conversation, but it's informed our business in so many ways this year that I don't know if we would have done it the same way.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
I love this advice that I feel like you're both kind of touching on, which is at the end of the day, it comes down to the humans on the other side. And for a listener who right now is feeling very scared about their future, who is trying to navigate this pandemic, I think it's almost this beam of hope that if you can keep coming back to, you've built this community, you have people around you who want to support you. If you just lean into that, there's going to be a lot of great things that kind of come out of it. Now, Jaime, you have a very high level kind of bird's eye view on the entire industry, e-commerce, commerce, retail, everything, being an investor. And I'm curious as to what trends you've seen. 2020 has been a really, really tough year, but I think it's also kind of highlighted some trends of successes and failures and what's really working and what's going to continue to work in the future. Is there anything that you've seen kind of come out this year or something that you've learned or has kind of been validated in this year?
I'd say, it's definitely brand specific. You think of a brand like Haus and how, a lot of opportunity opened up during COVID, to be frank. Some of my other portfolio companies, have the same story. A kid's book about Judy, these are brands that are relevant right now and very, needed, I guess, during the times that we're in. But for those where, the timing isn't so favorable, I think what I've seen, work in their favor is just a really open mindset around things like distribution channels. I'm really seeing that, gosh, if you've heard me talk, you'll hear me preaching omni-channel constantly. And so I just think now more than ever, even given the circumstances of not being able to go into stores, I just think having that open mindset of let's pursue other channels. Let's just keep an open mind about where our customers might be. And I think that's the trick is, not making assumptions about who your customer is and where they shop. I think that's just so important regardless of what times that we're in. Also, I think, having an open mind around shifting your product roadmap. Maybe we have assumptions around, the products we think we're going to make this year, but in reality, maybe that's not the right choice. And so it's just really listening to the customers, understanding what they need, and just having open, frank conversations with them and, showing your human side as a brand and as a company too, right? Admitting if you're scared or that you don't know what to do and just seeking their help. But I think that's just so relatable and just so authentic.
Yeah. So you mentioned the word omni-channel, and that is something that comes up in literally every single interview on this show because it is the only way brick and mortar stores are going to continue to function. But I think it's actually worth taking a pause on this one today. And could you actually just define really what omnichannel is and
Mm,
what it looks like?
yeah, just it's a strategy of distribution that encompasses every possible channel, and whether it's in retail or D2C. For Schmidt's, one thing that made our brand really unique is that we not only pursued every distribution channel in retail, but it was within retail. It was just like every possible type of retailer. So, for example, maybe our competition, was a luxury natural deodorant who would only sell in Whole Foods or Sephora. For us, we saw opportunity in tapping into some of the channels that they would want nothing to do with. So maybe that was Walmart or CVS or Dollar General. We really saw opportunity to reach those customers. And not only was it a strategic play, in terms of revenue potential, but also, from the get-go, my plan for my company and my mission was to really make accessible to everybody, natural, healthy products. And so by tapping into these channels, we could reach more people. And I just think it's everybody's right to have access to these kind of products. And so from a business standpoint and a moral one, it just made sense.
Yeah. And Helena, on your side, I know you guys don't have, an entire house store, but you have done some omni-channel stuff and you're not just selling through exactly one channel and one vehicle. How have you guys approached this idea of kind of harmonized commerce? Have there been any strategies or any campaigns that you have done to kind of get into another channel, to get in front of other consumers and to keep driving that? I just said it and I'm going to repeat the word holistic commerce.
Yeah, I mean, we eventually as a brand, to compete with the Diageos and the Camparis of the world, we need to be where they are, right? We need to be everywhere. And our plan always was to start direct to consumer so we could make the best possible products for the drinker and have that dialogue to make sure that we were making the best possible products and then expand. And then when 2020 happened, all of our wholesale dreams changed quickly, right?
Yeah.
Because it was like, wow, what is even going to happen? So what we've done really is we've taken a step back, right? Luckily, e-com skyrocketed, so we had a lot to focus on there, just to keep up with the growth. But really thinking like it's not about. It's funny, I see all these conversations on Twitter or wherever of like, what is the best channel, or like, is it DTC or wholesale? And it's like it's everything, and it's also specific. It's all contextual, right?
Yeah.
So for us, it's really taking a step back, continuing to pay attention to our customers and figuring out where are they moving towards, right? Are they still going to their local bottle shops in major cities? Not all of our customers live in major cities. Where are they going to buy food or buy, really cool products? Like where can we start to place ourselves to make their lives easier?
Yeah, I'd love to comment on that. So, Helena, you say that you took a step back, but I think in a lot of ways you took a step forward too. If you think about House's restaurant project, that's huge. I mean, that was like, and it happened so quickly, and it was just so beautifully executed. And so, I think you were like one of the brands that just really pivoted and just like powered through during COVID. And so, I want to make sure that we don't overlook, that's the significance of what House really pulled out of this.
Yeah, that was a great note, Jaime, because I wanted to bring it up too. Was that we talk a lot about resilience, and a lot of the stories on the show are, the pandemic hit, we took a beat, we figured out a way to take a step to pivot, and we're keep pivoting throughout the year because things keep changing. Helena, you guys did that, but you also did it really quickly and really well, and in a way that really made your customers like so excited. I mean, there's 2 of those restaurant project bottles sitting on my shelf right there. I think it was something that just clicked with your customer base so quickly. Can you tell us a little bit about that project and how you were even able to make that decision, that thought process that you went through?
Sure. Thanks, Jaime. For those who don't know, the restaurant project was something that we did pretty soon after COVID became a real thing in the US, where we partnered with 13 restaurants across the country to make custom aperitifs for them, collaborating with the chefs. And we made the aperitifs for them. We sold the aperitifs for them and shipped them and gave them all the profit. So we basically took the entire workload of making booze and sold it on behalf of the restaurants. And it was an amazing project. I mean, we have, a bunch of new best friends that we made from it. It was so great to just help these restaurants keep the lights on. It was a good experience. But I think, something funny that's kind of a theme in my life is people think that I make a lot of decisions really quickly, like it just came out of nowhere. And it's like, oh my God, there's like years of observation and anecdotes and research that went into this thing. And you can never anticipate it, right? Like I've been monitoring consumer trends for over a decade, working in Silicon Valley. And I like pay really close attention to the future of food and restaurants and e-commerce. And it was just this moment of, it was a light bulb, right? But the light bulb would have never gone off if it weren't for a lot of time observing and thinking, wow, like the e-commerce is the future, right? Like obviously we believed that for alcohol, but I also believe it for restaurants. I believe it for brick and mortar. And this just felt like such an amazing opportunity to show restaurants how they could participate in e-commerce and just take the lift off their hands, right? Because when you think about it, if a restaurant wanted to get into e-com, you'd have to develop a physical product and work with a co-packer, find a 3PL and logistics and go get permitting and like spend a ton of money. And it feels prohibitive, especially right now when restaurants are struggling anyway. So I think for us, it was really exciting to be like, this is what it could be like. And we'll help you, dip a toe in.
Yeah. And I love that you've kind of become this shining example of the creativity that's possible in retail, that even though it's been like this for so long, things can change. And I like the story because it turns a roadblock into a positive opportunity to make a decision that seemed quick on the outside. But like you're saying, I've been preparing for this kind of situation. And I think what you did was you had everything prepared. This outside force came in, global pandemic, changed every plan that you had. But then you were able to kind of trust your gut and trust that light bulb moment that you had and said, this actually is a really good idea for the current state. Now, something I want to get into with both of you is, it's been a really tough year for everybody. It's been an excessively tough year for brick and mortar retailers who previously relied 100% on foot traffic, as most of them did. And then now we're looking at, just this week, there are closures happening all over the North Americas again. Just in Colorado Springs, all non-essential retail is closed. In Toronto, all retail is closed down again. And so there's a lot of business owners out there that are looking at it and saying, this might actually be the end. Like this might be where my resilience ends and where my business isn't going to make it. And unfortunately, that's going to be true for some people, but also it's going to be not true for a lot of entrepreneurs who are able to kind of weather this storm in a certain way. So I'm curious if you guys could, take me back to a time when you were growing your business where, you felt that feeling that I don't know that I'm going to make it. I don't know if we're going to get past this, and describe kind of how you did get past it and what the mindset was to keep pushing forward.
I'll jump in. I mean, there are just so many. My book is sprinkled, with examples of just major challenges and moments of like, reflect, like, how are we going to pull through? If I had to think back to, a specific, significant one for me, Schmidt had started as a deodorant in a jar. And I had spent years, building a formula in a stick, because I knew that was the approach that most people wanted to use in applying their deodorant. And so, not only did a lot of time go into formulating this, but also, when we got close, we were ready to launch, and it was a major build up to this moment that people had been waiting for a deodorant stick from Schmidt's. So we put a lot of money and time and just heart into, creating marketing assets and building hype amongst our retailers and our customers, making sure our customer support team was ready to answer questions and to support how they could. And just so much, had gone into the planning. And then when launch came, we had serious problems with the formula. It was falling apart. It wasn't setting well. It was like a bumpy, kind of grainy texture. Even a couple of months down the line, when we had that problem fixed, we had some issues with the dials on the deodorant sticks getting stuck. And so just really significant issues in manufacturing. And so, while we had perfected and, the other parts of the launch and just built up so much hype, we just kind of not overlooked, but didn't account for some of the issues that could come up in scaling. So, for example, I perfected this formula on my stovetop, right? In my kitchen, still making about 20 units on a batch. But when you take that into the factory and you multiply that by 100 and you're making bigger batches, it doesn't always translate. So there's problems that came up that we just weren't anticipating. So that was huge. We had customers who were sending their products back. They were mad. We had a huge financial loss. We were just sending out free product to replace it. And sometimes the free product wasn't perfect either. And so I could go into it for a while, but I'll just leave you with that. I mean, and in-house manufacturing, and Helena can relate, it just poses so many more potential problems. And that's a podcast in itself, I think, is just in-house manufacturing versus co-packers.
Yeah. And so as all that's happening, I mean, I'm sure in the moment, the emotions are like panic and like, we've just done this whole launch and our customers aren't happy and things are not looking good and now we're losing money. How did you mentally kind of stay in a positive place or kind of think through the solutions and keep moving forward instead of just kind of putting your head in the sand and saying, well, this was a really big loss and we're just going to have to take it on the chin. And I guess maybe we'll keep going.
I think, it just really came down to me knowing that my customers were depending on me. And that is just what motivated me is there were so many heartfelt testimonials and just so much love for the brand. And I didn't want to disappoint. And so I was just so committed to figuring it out. And it's just the more, I guess, the more setbacks you have, the more just sort of like amped up you are to like prove yourself too, right? Like I just was totally committed to making it happen. And then it really just comes down to like reminding myself why I started the business. For the first time in my life, I was happy with the work I was doing and I was feeling fulfilled and just like seeing how my product was changing lives. And that, was really all that it took to keep me moving forward.
Yeah, I love that you said that because it's something that I've heard now from a lot of these brick and mortar merchants in these interviews is, and I'm thinking back to one interview in our Denver episode where this lady owns a local plant shop in Denver. They were in kind of like a collective market for a while. Then they went to their independent retail. They opened for a month, had like double the sales they'd ever had before. And then COVID came and they had to close their doors. They were only open for a month. And her attitude was, well, if I can survive this, I can survive anything. And so we're just going to survive it because there's no option because that's what we're here to do. Yep. So I really love that message of you're just going to do it because you have to, because that's where your passion is. That's where your customers want. And I do think the data backs it up right now that people are wanting these community local shopping experiences and they want to support their communities. So your customers do really want you to succeed. It's not like they're against you succeeding by any means. Right. Helena, what about you? I'm sure you have many good stories.
Oh my God. Like the amount of tears. I'm like, I haven't cried today, but
we're doing good.
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, it was no one would believe in our idea. No one would, we needed some investment to get off the ground. No one would touch us. No one would give us money. All of my acquaintances stopped talking to me for a while because I think that they felt weird about the fact that they didn't want to invest. It sucked, and then of course it worked. And then all the problems, like Jaime said, they become scaling problems, right?
Yeah.
Supply chain, holy crap, things go wrong. The bottles don't get delivered. The corks don't get delivered. The boxes don't get delivered. It's just it can just feel like the end of the world, it can be like, oh my God, if we don't have what we need to sell product and then no one ever comes back, this is the end of the business. It's easy to kind of get in your head and think oh my God, this is the end. Yeah. When in reality, you can just kind of tough it out and do some breathing exercises and it usually somehow works itself out. But I think at the core of it, you just have to believe in what you're doing. And, if you don't, I'm not sure what to tell you, but I think a lot of people who get into this business do it because they really believe in what they're doing and they really believe that they're bringing something to the table that people want. And we wouldn't have gotten House to launch if I'd believed all the people that told me the idea was dumb, or that no one would buy alcohol on the internet, or that this was a tiny lifestyle business or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, if I'd believed any of those people, then House wouldn't be here. And then same with supply chain. It's just like, it's kind of breathing through the nightmares, but also taking everything as a learning experience, because there's always some nugget of learning that you can get from every disaster.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think 2020 has been just like, let's shove the biggest learning possible down your throats, and here's e-commerce, go run it. But at the same time, you're right. It's trusting what you have and trusting the core of kind of your offering and your business and your brand. I remember the episode with Great Lakes Brewery where they went from, they had 15,000 gallons of beer sitting in their silos and nobody could come into their restaurant. And so they went, well, we got to do local delivery. We've never done it before, but we're just going to up and do it. And a lot of people said, nobody's going to buy a case of beer to be locally delivered that's more expensive when they could just go to a grocery store and get a Coors. But they said, not our customers. Our customers want this from us, and we're going to deliver it to them. And lo and behold, they're doing better than they've ever done before, which I think it's such a beautiful story. And another thing that I'm hearing both of you guys say again and again that I kind of want to highlight and go deeper on, which is focusing on your customers and what they want and how you can pivot in their best interest. I think right now for retailers, it's really easy to, you can walk out of your storefront and look to the left and say, well, they're doing curbside pickup, and over there, they're doing local delivery, and they have an online store that looks 10 times better than mine because their son is a graphic designer. And that can add in so much more complexity to seeing what other people are doing. And Jaime, I know you talk about this a lot in the book, that it was very tempting to look at competitors, to look at copycats, and to kind of try and chase those wins instead of just focusing on your line. And I think right now it's so important for brands to really just hone into those communities. Jaime, can you talk a little bit on that idea of kind of putting the blinders on a bit right now?
Yeah, it's hard. I think, especially like you said, if you're a retail store and you're looking at your neighbors and you see them succeeding in what it is they're doing, I think it's just, we get desperate and we lose sight of kind of our goal and our mission for our business. I think that's what I attribute the success of Schmidt's to in those earliest years, was just truly following through on the vision that I had for my business and what I wanted to deliver to my customers. I think there's a balance. You have to know what people are doing. You have to, be aware of the competitive landscape. But when you're obsessing over it and trying to kind of one up it, that's when things can go south. And that's when you lose sight of, the real kind of, real purpose behind the business that you're building for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Helena, what about you? Because I know, you guys don't have as many like product competitions, but the D2C e-commerce space is massive, and every brand is looking at the next brand to see what they're doing and trying to copy this and copy that. But in a lot of things, House has actually gone the opposite way of traditional D2C. Just talking about like the website and the visuals of House, it's not a pink palette with a product and nothing behind it. It's very lifestyle photography, and you get really brought into the brand right away. How were you making those decisions that went kind of against the grain?
Yeah, I think I'm really comfortable with doing things differently. And I think it's really easy for a lot of people to feel kind of in this trap of comparing themselves to others, whether it's their professional career or, I don't know, their aesthetics or their company. It's so easy to get caught up in the rat race. And I think you have to do a lot to protect yourself. Whether that's having a therapist or whether that's like very intentionally muting people on Twitter who would make you want to go adhere to the norms. Like, I don't know, you have to protect yourself and give yourself the space to make decisions that are best for you, best for your customers, and not motivated by doing what other people are doing. Because And just asking those questions of like, why is everyone doing it this way? Is it just because they're all copying each other? Or is there some convention that makes sense here? That question's just as valid, right? You don't want to reinvent the wheel for no reason. But I think that's the balance that we've tried to have at Haus of like, we do things a lot differently than most companies in our space or most companies in general, but you don't want to reinvent the wheel just for the sake of reinventing it either.
I think it brings into question too, like this, like the idea of intuition, right? And how like there's so much there, and intuition is it's not just some magical, hopeful, wishful thinking. It's like it's based on all of the experiences that you have today. It's like Helena said earlier about the restaurant project. I mean, she didn't just jump into it and quickly get it done. She had a history of studying the industry and following trends, and so that all plays into this intuition piece. And I think that's what needs to be, trusted when we are making these decisions about how we stack up against competition.
Yeah. And especially now with brick and mortar stores having to do all these pivots, there are so many different things you can do. And that's a big thing with e-commerce is there are a million options of things you can do when you set up an online store. And then now you're talking, okay, if our doors are closed, we have the option of doing curbside delivery or local pickup or buy online and pick up in store. And all of those trying to do everything at once just because that's what everybody is doing or because that's what Kristen said on Resilient Retail is daunting and almost paralyzing, I think, for a lot of people. So this is really great advice of, yes, you can see all the things that are kind of happening and the trends are going, but always balancing that with, okay, but is that best for me and my customers? Just thinking back again to that woman who owned the plant store, she tried to do delivery of plants right when the pandemic started, and they did it for a couple of weeks. And she just said, plants were getting broken. It just wasn't working for us. So we just stopped and we did local pickup instead. And the customers were fine with that. And they loved it and it worked better. Just being able to make those really hard decisions based on, like you're saying, Jaime, that intuition. One thing that we keep saying is doing what's best for your customers. And now I just have to ask the most pointed tactical question. I'll let either one of you take this, which is, how do you do that? How do you know what's best for your customers? And how do you make those decisions?
I'll step in. I think it's a combination of data, right? Like we can't overlook what the numbers are showing us. We can talk the technical side of it about how our certain ads are performing, for example, right? We're pitching to different audiences and seeing who responds most, or what sort of response we're getting in terms of certain product launches, and so it's a mix of data and really understanding who you think your customer is and who you want to reach, but at the same time, kind of maintaining flexibility there and not making assumptions.
Yeah, I mean, like Jaime said, I think intuition plays a strong role here again of like, you kind of have to show the customers what you think they want. That's why you started the company, right? And if they come back and they do not care, or if they hate it, then your intuition wasn't right this time. But I think it's that combination, right? Of like, you feel in your gut, and maybe based on considerable research, what you think you have the unique talent to put out into the world and see how it's received. And then I think from there, it's the dialogue. It really is that back and forth. Like, could this product be improved? Could it be iterated upon? Is there any part of it that's breaking, literally or metaphorically? And yeah, it's kind of it's like art and science, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the beauty of, for the listeners who are brick and mortar owners, there is a beauty in e-commerce of that you can test these things a lot faster than you can in a store. The difference between, okay, if I put up this sign in my front window, I need to wait a month and compare it to another sign in a month. You've got a 2 to 3 month test there. But online, you can do these things in a day, a week. 6, I almost just went all the way to 6 weeks, which is longer than a month. My math is great today, guys. But I know a lot of these merchants are kind of nervous about getting online, but that's a really big benefit that you have. And then another point I just want to make sure the audience gets is a lot of this one-on-one communication that leads you to have an intuition about your customers. You're lucky in that you've already had it for a lot of years. And so you can go back into those repositories and those memories in your brain and trust them and use them to then further your decisions now that you're having to go into different channels, that you're having to go online. you're not having to reinvent the wheel. You're just having to kind of tweak the wheel to the new situation.
Yeah. And I want to add too, I don't think it's always about really honing in on one singular audience and making that product perfect for them. Sometimes it's expanding your audience, and with that, it kind of expanding your offerings too. I think that's, for certain brands that makes sense as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, since you guys both have so much experience on the e-commerce side of things, and a lot of brick and mortar store owners are getting online right now. A lot of them have just set up their stores. They're trying to figure out email marketing, social, all of these things. And then, they just got hit with second closures. And so they're really having to buckle down into e-commerce. Is there, I know this is such a loaded question, but is there like the one thing that they should be thinking about as they go through these processes, or the most important thing? Helena, I'll start with you.
Something that came to me pretty recently, just observing how crazy shipping logistics is this year, with COVID and with every big, merchandiser getting into e-commerce, like shipping is bonkers. And one thing that brick and mortar should really embrace as their secret sauce is the fact that they can ship locally to an audience that already knows them. Like, what a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't discount if you're in Denver, or if you're in Austin, or if you're in Nashville, like, do not discount the audience that you've already cultivated. And I guarantee there's a lot of people in the last half of December that are going to be scrambling to try and find any company that will deliver to them in time for Christmas.
Yeah.
And that's going to be worse this year than any year. Like we at Haus, like we have, we work with a company called Ojai who does last mile delivery for us. Like you can order Haus within an hour if you live in San Francisco or LA or the surrounding areas. And I would encourage that similar line of thinking within your own communities. Like really anticipate that there's going to be a need for last minute deliveries, and you are so equipped to give your community what they need and to save their butts in time for holiday. Don't try to be everything for everyone in the whole country. I think this opportunity is there, just waiting to be taken.
Yeah, that's great advice, and almost like brings us all the way around to where we started, of start with your community and then grow out from there. It's really easy to go into e-commerce and then say, oh, my target demographic now is huge. It could be the whole world. But if you think in kind of short term right now, the next month or so, these brick and mortar retailers, you're right, are posed to actually do really well because they can do local delivery. And I already know, like, I've bought 0 Christmas presents so far, so I already know I'm behind the curve and I'm going to be dealing with shipping issues. Jaime, what about you? What are things, or a very important thing people should think about as they're starting to transition online?
I would say with some of the retailers that we're talking about, I think just really nurturing those relationships with your vendor partners is going to be key. More now than ever, I'd say. And I think, the value in that is opening up opportunity in terms of, exclusive products that maybe you can carry on your site that they're not offering to other retailers, favorable pricing, just really making sure you're putting attention on those relationships. I think can only pay off. And I think that's true too. If you have a product that you are making in-house, and maybe you don't have outside vendors, but everything is, your brand, same thing applies to your suppliers, right? Just relationship building, always trying to work towards favorable terms and just really nurturing.
Yeah. Now, kind of the last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up is visual identity, and how you create a visual identity that can span from retail to wholesale to a pop-up to online, which is really difficult. And Helena, you guys do this so well that, you go to your website, like I was talking about, listeners go to drink.house. Did I get it right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Go to drink.house, look at the website. It's so lively, right off the bat what you're supposed to do with this product. You're supposed to share it with people. You're supposed to enjoy it. And you start to get those feelings. And then also you get the bottle and it is beautiful and it feels nice. And it comes in this incredible box with a magazine of you and Woody's ranch and the dogs and everything. It's so fantastically done where it bridges physical and digital. And Jaime, you talked a lot about this in the book as well, as having to create a visual identity. You had one that worked really well at farmers markets, but it didn't really transfer into wholesale that well, and maybe not online that well. How do you even think about, okay, I have this visual identity in my store. How do I make that into a brand that now connects in the same way online?
Oh, man. I think a lot of it, again, is intuition. A lot of it is thinking about what your customers need to know in that moment. We approached our packaging very different than other types of liquor because we didn't have the burden of competing on a retail shelf. We were competing on the internet. So packaging served a different purpose. It didn't need to say everything on the bottle. We had to take on that extra lift on the website and with press and with ads and with the education pamphlet that comes with every order. Like, I think it's so much of identity is not about even the visuals, right? It's about how can we give people all of the information that they need in that moment, but not more than that, right? It's all about there are 100 things that they might need to know, but how do you give them the right messages at the right time?
I love that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think I would add just, doing things in a way that hasn't been done before. How is the competition branding and speaking to their audience, and how can I do it in a way that still makes sense for the industry but looks entirely different from what everybody else is doing?
Yeah, and stays very true to that core mission, that core who you are, who your brand is, and what your intentions are. But Jaime, I want to read one quote from the book that I highlighted today that I think is such a beacon of hope for these people right now, and this word is going to be tricky, so hang with me if I get it wrong. I don't know why it's so tricky. I practiced it like 3 times before today. Naivety.
I knew that was it. I knew what you were going to say.
It's a hard one. Naivety can be really helpful. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yes. I think back to my days of starting Schmidt's and, sort of just jumping into it and I guess following my interests and my passion and to build this brand, but not knowing too much about what it takes to build a business, what the competition again, is doing. And I think it was easier back then, to be frank. 2010, you can get away with a little bit more naivety. But I think today, the landscape is a lot more competitive. I think it's a lot smarter. There are more people, trying to come up. So I think there's still some, ignorance is bliss still stands true. But I think as a business matures and scales, we have to, build on that and make sure we do know what we're up against. But I think, great example. People ask me all the time, like, would you start another business now, knowing what you know? And I think that experience would look entirely different because I know so much. And it's almost scary to know like all the things that can go wrong. But when I started Schmidt's, I didn't. I was kind of oblivious. And so I was, had less fear.
Yeah. And I think for the folks who are going into something brand new right now, it's this idea that, yes, you're up against competition that may have millions of VC dollars in funding and the smartest data scientists of all time. But also you have the authentic naivety, I did it, yes, that you can express to your customers, that you can say, look, this is the first time we're ever doing this, but we love your support so much. And I actually think that that's a benefit right now, is a lot of consumers like to see that authenticity from founders, and authenticity can often come from naivety.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now we just got to wrap up this episode. Helena, I'll ask you this question. If somebody is listening right now and they're in that moment of panic that you were talking about earlier, that the world is ending, this is the end of my business, we are not going to get through this, it's crashing down, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, is there one piece of advice or something you could give to that person right now?
Yeah. I think, this may sound funny because your pain is valid, but it may bring some comfort to know that every successful entrepreneur has felt those feelings. And, having seen so many companies come and go in Silicon Valley, the common thread of the ones that make it are they just gritted their teeth. They were like cockroaches, right? You just you're unkillable. And I think that's a mental thing more than anything, because if you can survive, with just a handful of dollars left in your bank account, you can go find someone, there's someone out there who can bail you out. Or if you are dealing with the supply chain issues, there might be a way to make it work. Or even if not, like, you'll be sold out for a month and then you'll still make it work after that. Like, there's a lot of it is just about surviving. And even with businesses that look like they're perfect and doing amazing, like, a lot of them are just surviving, but in a different way. The highs are higher and the lows can be just as low.
Yeah.
And there's more at stake. So if there's any comfort in just knowing that even the people who look like they're doing amazing are all freaking out just as much, you can get through it.
Yeah. I mean, Helena started this episode by saying, guys, I haven't cried today yet, so we're doing good. Everybody's going through it. Okay, so last question. I'll ask both of you because we end every show with this question. Jaime, I'll start with you. Since this show is called Resilient Retail, I think we've we've danced around the definition of resilience now about 100 times, but what does that term resilience mean to you?
To me, it's an unwillingness to settle. And I think that's true across all aspects of life, right? Not just in business, but in our personal lives and our relationships and just everything. I always say that was my greatest strength in growing my business, was an unwillingness to settle. And I talked too about, it's not that I was more confident than other people, it's that I was more resilient and just more willing and able to bounce back. And yeah.
Yeah. Helena, I feel like you just gave the most perfect definition, but I'm going to make you do it again and ask you anyways. What does resilience mean to you?
I mean, gosh, there's so many ways it can apply, right? But I think the biggest thing, and something that I'm sure every business has gone through and will go through again, is you're going to hear no over and over and over. Whether it's investors, whether it's journalists, whether it's some sort of gatekeeper, and you really just have to believe in what you're doing and not believe them, and be the cockroach that you want to be.
I feel like now we need to make shirts that just say "Be the cockroach." It's a new slogan. There we go.
I would say it's unique. I don't think I've seen any other DTC company do that.
I don't think so. Well, thank you guys so much. This is such a fantastic conversation, and I feel like it was just so hopeful for the people who are really low in hope right now. Also, if you are watching this video, I apologize. I forgot that it gets dark at 4:00 now and goes into midnight time. So I'm just in my weird gamer studio now. But Jaime, Helena, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Yes, thank you, Kristen, Helena.
Thanks for having us.